All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the one-page financial plan by Carl Richards.
Oh, yeah, I love this book.
Yeah, it's great. We're going to really try to extract some key insights,
Mm-hmm.
try to simplify your financial planning a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some great stories in this book, like the one about losing 10 grand on InfoSpace stock back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And the part about how picking a financial plan can feel as overwhelming as a vet visit,
Right.
where they just give you too many options.
Yeah, too many choices.
Like, anyone relate to that?
I think everybody does.
Oh, for sure.
You feel like you're at the vet and they're like, well, we could do this or this or
Yeah,
this.
right.
You're like, oh my gosh,
I don't know.
which one's right for me?
Yeah, you just freeze up.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's interesting is that Richards actually highlights how a lot of successful people feel lost when it comes to their own finances.
That's right.
He tells a story about a friend who was a corporate CFO,
Mm-hmm.
but still felt totally overwhelmed by personal financial planning.
Yeah. You would think that someone who has that kind of expertise would have it all figured out.
Right.
But you know what I think? Sometimes
Frank?
it's
Yeah.
easier to manage other people's money than it is your own.
It's true.
And I think there's also a certain amount of pressure that comes with that kind of position. Like,
Hey,
you're supposed to have all the answers.
you're supposed to be the expert.
Right.
Yeah, and it's almost like we hit a wall, right? You know, we think I should be better at this,
Right.
and then we kind of just avoid it altogether.
And that's exactly what Richards argues, is that feeling of being unqualified or being intimidated
Right.
often leads to inaction,
Yeah,
which can be more detrimental in the long run.
for sure. So then how do we break through that?
Well, he suggests a really simple but powerful starting point,
Okay.
and that is asking yourself, why is money important to you?
Okay.
And I know that sounds kind of basic,
Yeah.
but when you really think about it, it helps connect your finances to your values and goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know why you're doing something,
Right.
it's hard to stay motivated.
Absolutely.
It's hard to make those decisions.
Right.
So he shares an example of a woman named Sarah, whose answer to that question was simply some time.
Oh, yeah, I love that part.
Yeah,
You know, like it makes you think, right?
it does.
Like maybe instead of chasing these arbitrary financial goals,
Hmm.
it's about figuring out how to achieve that sometime.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's saving for a sabbatical or negotiating for more flexibility at work.
Exactly.
How would you translate that desire for some time into a financial goal?
Well, I think it depends on what that sometime looks like for you.
Right?
If it's about taking a break from work,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, maybe it's saving up a certain amount of money
Right.
so that you can cover your expenses for a few months or even a year.
Mm-hmm.
If it's about spending more time with your family,
Right.
maybe it's about working fewer hours, even if it means taking a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
So it really goes back to understanding your priorities
Yeah.
and what truly matters to you.
I think that's really, really great advice.
And, it's not always an easy conversation to have,
Yeah.
especially with family members or partners,
Yeah.
because sometimes, we might have different ideas
Yeah.
about what that sometimes should look like.
Totally.
He actually talks about a couple, Bob and Sue, who had been married for over a decade,
Okay.
but realized through this exercise that they had completely different travel aspirations.
Wow. So they never even talked about that.
They hadn't really talked about it in a concrete way.
Mm.
They had these vague ideas
Right.
about wanting to travel, but they hadn't really sat down
Gotten specific.
and figured out,
Yeah.
okay, what does that actually look like?
Mhm.
What are our priorities?
Yeah.
And so, this exercise really forced them
Yeah.
to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And it can be uncomfortable, but avoiding those conversations can lead to much bigger issues down the line.
Absolutely. Communication is key
Yeah.
in any relationship.
For sure. And once you have that clearer sense of why money matters to you,
Hmm.
Richards argues that you can start making more informed financial decisions,
Right.
even without knowing what the future holds.
Yeah. And, a lot of people get stuck in this analysis paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
They're so worried about making the wrong decision
Right.
that they end up making no decision at all.
Yeah, that's so true.
And you know what he says?
What's that?
He's like, you're never going to have all the information.
Right.
You're never going to be able to predict the future perfectly.
Right.
So just make the best decision you can with the information you have and be willing to adjust course as you go along.
Yeah.
He makes this really clever analogy to Alice in Wonderland,
Oh, yeah.
where Alice asks the Cheshire Cat which way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the cat replies, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to.
Oh, yeah, I love that quote.
Yeah. It's a great reminder that we don't need to have all the answers
Right.
to start making progress.
Right.
Just having a direction,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a bit fuzzy,
Yeah,
is better than standing still out of fear or indecision.
absolutely. So instead of trying to predict the future, which is impossible,
Right.
it's about setting goals that are aligned with those values we were just talking about.
That's right. And being willing to adjust them as life unfolds.
Mm.
He actually admits to achieving goals that he had completely forgotten about.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes the journey takes us in unexpected directions.
Yeah, I think that's really reassuring, actually.
It is.
It takes the pressure off
Mhm.
of like needing to have this perfect plan.
Right. It's not about perfection.
Right.
It's about progress
Absolutely.
and being open to the possibilities.
I love that. Okay, so we've got our why.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a general sense of direction.
Yeah.
Now what?
Now it's time to take stock of your current financial situation.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of people start to feel that fear and anxiety creeping in again.
Right.
But it's crucial to face those challenges head on.
Absolutely.
Richards emphasizes the importance of understanding your assets
Mm-hmm.
and your liabilities.
Okay.
And he tells this funny anecdote about a friend
Yeah.
who was a corporate CFO.
I remember this.
Yeah.
It was Steve, right?
Steve, yeah.
And he wasn't entirely sure about his own personal finances.
Not at all.
That's wild.
Not though, right?
Like, you'd think he would have that down pat,
You would think.
but he was so focused on managing,
Other people's money?
other people's money that he had neglected his own.
Yeah, and it's easy to do,
Oh, it is.
especially when you're busy and successful.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to just put your own finances on the back burner.
Yeah, you think, oh, I'll get to it later.
Exactly.
But later never comes.
And then, suddenly you're in a situation where
Yeah.
you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed.
Right.
Because you haven't been paying attention.
Right. It's important to avoid letting fear or shame keep you from getting a clear picture of where you stand financially.
Absolutely.
And, Richards is very open
Yeah.
about his own struggles with debt and how that impacted his health. Facing those challenges head on is so crucial.
It is. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid.
Right.
It might sting at first,
Yeah,
but then you can start to heal.
absolutely. And he reminds us, it's not just about the money in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
He says to consider all forms of capital,
That's right.
including those non-monetary contributions that we make within our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the time and energy that you invest in your family, your community,
Right.
your own well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all valuable assets, too.
Yeah.
They contribute to our sense of wealth and happiness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about those stories that we tell ourselves about money,
Oh, yeah.
especially when we're trying to justify our spending habits.
I think we're all guilty of that.
Oh, I know this one all too well.
Yeah.
Like calling a new iPad an investment because it helps with work.
Right.
Or convincing myself that, those expensive shoes were on sale, so it's okay.
We've all been there.
I know.
But Richards encourages us to challenge those narratives
Right.
and replace them with honest financial awareness.
Mm-hmm. He uses the example of the always buy a house argument, which often overlooks the complexities
Right.
and potential downsides of homeownership.
Yeah. Homeownership isn't for everyone.
Right.
And it's definitely not always the best financial decision.
Right.
There are a lot of factors to consider,
Mm-hmm.
and it's important to weigh the pros and cons carefully.
Absolutely. It's about looking beyond the surface
Mm-hmm.
and being honest with ourselves about our spending habits.
And speaking of honesty,
Ooh.
he suggests this pretty radical exercise
Okay.
called a spending cleanse.
A spending cleanse.
Have you ever tried one?
I haven't, but I'm very intrigued by this.
Yeah. It's basically about
Tell me more.
cutting out
Yeah.
all non-essential spending
Okay.
for a set period of time
Okay.
to gain a clearer understanding of your needs versus your wants.
Mm-hmm.
So he outlines different approaches.
Okay.
Like you could avoid all discretionary spending for a week
Wow.
or even a month.
A month.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It can be tough,
Yeah.
but it can also be really eye-opening.
I can imagine you would have to get creative and resourceful
Yeah, absolutely.
to make that work.
It forces you to think outside the box
Right.
and come up with new ways
Mm.
to meet your needs.
It's like hitting the reset button on your spending habits.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like you're pressing pause
Mm.
on your autopilot spending patterns
Right.
and taking a step back
Mm-hmm.
to really assess what's important.
And then once you have that awareness, you can start making more intentional choices that align with your values and long-term goals.
That's right.
Okay, so speaking of long-term goals, Richards also has a really fresh perspective on saving.
He does.
You know, he challenges that traditional save 15% rule because he argues that finding a sustainable savings rate should be based on your income and your goals.
Exactly.
And not just some arbitrary percentage that might not be realistic for everyone.
Right.
And he has a story in there about a friend who said, you know, I save as much as I reasonably can.
I love that.
And I love that approach.
Yeah.
You know, it takes the pressure off.
It does.
It focuses on finding what works for you.
It's about finding a balance
Right.
that feels sustainable, not punishing.
Yes. I love that. So he also offers some really practical tips for curbing impulse spending.
He does.
Like the 72-hour test.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for someone like me who's prone to impulse purchases,
Okay.
how does that work?
So before you make any significant purchase,
Okay.
you wait 72 hours,
Okay.
which gives you time to cool off, think it through, and decide if it's truly something you need or want,
Okay.
or if it's just, you know,
A fleeting desire?
a fleeting desire, a moment of weakness,
Yes,
you know.
exactly.
So that's a great way to avoid buyer's remorse.
I can see how that would really help, especially with those online purchases that are just so easy
Oh, yeah.
to click and buy.
It's so easy.
And then it shows up at your door and you're like,
What was I thinking?
what have I done?
Exactly.
Oh, he also talks about the 30-day test,
Yes.
where you put the money aside that you would have spent for 30 days.
And if you still feel strongly about the purchase after that time,
Right.
then, you know, maybe it's something
It's a real want.
that you really value.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and buy it.
Okay, I love both of those strategies.
Yeah.
You know, it's just putting some space between the impulse and the action,
That's right.
allowing you to make a more conscious decision.
Exactly.
And, you know, this next part is where I think things can get a little intimidating for a lot of people, even me sometimes, and that is investing.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming,
It does.
especially with all the information out there,
Yeah.
all the jargon, all the different options.
You know, and Richards even shares a story about losing $10,000 on InfoSpace stock.
Oh, yeah, that was a tough lesson.
Back in the day.
Yeah. It's a great reminder that everyone makes mistakes, even financial experts.
Right.
But what's important is to learn from those mistakes
Yeah.
and make more informed choices going forward.
And he really emphasizes a difference between investing and speculating.
Absolutely.
You know, those hot stock tips that you hear on TV are more like gambling than investing.
That's right. It's all about trying to time the market. And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Right.
He advocates for a long-term evidence-based approach.
Right.
It's like a doctor approaching a diagnosis. They wouldn't base their treatment decisions on hunches or gut feelings.
Right.
They rely on scientific research and proven methods. Investing should be approached with the same rigor.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really takes the emotion out of it. Encourages a more rational, data-driven approach.
That's right.
Yeah. And, you know, speaking of approaching things rationally,
Yeah.
Richard spends a lot of time discussing one of the most common pitfalls of investing,
And that is
market volatility.
market volatility, those ups and downs.
Yeah, they can be nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah.
Even for the most seasoned investors.
Absolutely.
He actually tells a story about a woman who knew she needed to sell some of her underperforming stocks,
Right.
but emotionally she was having a really hard time letting go.
That's a classic example of how our feelings can get in the way
Right.
of making sound financial decisions.
Right. We know logically what to do, but then our emotions
get in the way.
take over.
Yeah.
That's why Richards emphasizes the importance of understanding your risk tolerance and having a plan in place before you even start investing.
Absolutely.
He introduces this idea of an investment policy statement. Okay, I admit that sounds kind of intimidating.
It does.
What exactly is that?
So think of it as a written document
Okay.
that outlines your investment strategy
Okay.
and the rationale behind it.
Okay, so it's like a roadmap for your investment.
Exactly.
Okay.
It helps you to stay focused on your long-term goals, even when the market gets turbulent.
Yeah.
Because you know when the market starts going down,
Yeah.
it's easy to panic
Oh,
and make
yes.
emotional
Right,
decisions
yeah.
that you'll later regret.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have this document
Right.
that you can refer back to, it can help you to stay the course.
Okay, so it's like a contract with yourself to stay committed to the plan even when things get tough.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of getting tough, you know, Richards reminds us that it's okay to ask for help when we need it.
Absolutely. It's not a sign of weakness to seek professional advice.
Right. Sometimes we all need an objective outsider to help us see things more clearly.
And he doesn't just say go find an advisor.
No.
He outlines specific qualities to look for.
That's right.
Like someone who understands your values and goals, is transparent about any potential conflicts of interest,
Right.
and is genuinely committed to your long-term financial well-being.
It's about finding a trusted partner who
Yeah.
can help you navigate the complexities of the financial world.
Absolutely, because we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Everything from defining your why to understanding your current financial situation.
Yeah.
We even touched on investing and seeking financial advice. What stood out to you so far?
I think for me, what really stands out is how Richards blends
Yeah.
the practical aspects of financial planning
Right.
with the emotional side of money. He acknowledges that our feelings and biases,
It can have a huge impact on our financial decisions.
for sure.
And he offers strategies for navigating those challenges.
I agree. It's not just about crunching numbers and creating spreadsheets.
No, it's not.
It's about understanding ourselves, our values and goals, and creating a plan that supports the life we want to live.
Exactly.
So, we talked a lot about investing and debt and things like that. I think one thing that we often overlook in personal finance is insurance. Not exactly the sexiest topic, but Richards actually makes it pretty interesting.
He does.
And he argues that for most people, term life insurance is probably the most sensible
Right.
and cost-effective option.
Yeah, he has a way of cutting through the jargon
He does.
and getting right to the heart of the matter.
He does. What I appreciate is he explains it in a way that makes sense. Like he compares term insurance
Yeah.
to like renting coverage.
Right.
You pay a premium
Yeah.
for a specific period of time.
Right. And it provides a payout to your beneficiaries if you pass away during that term.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And he even walks you through calculating how much coverage you might actually need,
Yeah.
rather than just pushing you
Right.
buy the most expensive policy,
Yeah, he's not trying to sell you anything.
Right.
He's just trying to give you the information.
right, to make an informed decision.
Exactly.
Yeah. He also gives some great advice about not letting fear drive your insurance decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that part about the cancer insurance?
Oh, yeah. The salesperson trying to scare him
Right.
into buying this expensive cancer insurance policy.
Yeah, it's such a classic example of
Yeah.
how we can get so caught up in those what-if scenarios and end up like way overinsured.
Right. And financially stretched.
Exactly.
Because you're paying for all these premiums
right.
that you may not even need.
It's about being smart and strategic,
Exactly.
focusing on the coverage that truly matters. And sometimes, the best protection for your financial future isn't another insurance policy,
What is it then?
but tackling your debt.
Okay.
He tells this great story about Chris,
Okay.
who was feeling envious of his business partner,
Okay.
who was taking all these risks
Oh.
with his investments.
Okay.
It would seem to be paying off.
Okay. Yeah, we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Comparing ourselves to others, feeling like we're falling behind. So what happened?
Well, so this was right before the housing market crash.
Yeah.
And his partner had all this leverage,
Okay.
and he was making all this money. But then the market crashed,
Oh, no.
and he lost everything.
Wow.
And Chris, who'd been, kind of playing it safe
Yeah.
and paying down his debt,
Right.
ended up in a much better position.
Wow. That's such a good reminder that,
Yeah.
those get-rich-quick schemes often come with hidden risks.
And slow and steady progress can actually be more rewarding in the long run.
Exactly. It's not always about hitting the home run. Sometimes it's about just getting on base.
Absolutely. So, speaking of debt,
Yeah.
Richards, he doesn't shy away from that whole good debt versus bad debt conversation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it always feels a little oversimplified to me. I think it really depends on your individual circumstances, your interest rates, your overall financial goals.
Right. He encourages readers to really take a look at the interest rates on their various debts
Right.
and prioritize paying down
Okay.
the ones with the highest rates first.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if you've got a credit card with a 20% interest rate,
Right.
and a student loan with a 5% interest rate, it probably makes more sense.
Pay down that credit card.
To focus on paying down that credit card debt first. Yeah, he also doesn't sugarcoat the realities of homeownership either.
No, he doesn't.
You know, even though your home is often considered an asset, a mortgage is still a debt.
That's right.
You know, that needs to be managed responsibly.
And, you know, he's very open about his own struggles with homeownership.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually lost his house during the market crash.
Oh, wow.
Which obviously had a huge impact on him.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. It was a really tough time for him. But, you know, he uses that experience to challenge that always buy a house narrative that's so prevalent in our culture.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he points out that renting isn't necessarily throwing money away.
Right.
It can provide a lot more flexibility, especially if you're not sure where life is going to take you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you know, if you're thinking about moving for a job or, you know, starting a family or whatever it might be.
Renting can make a lot more sense.
Renting might make more sense.
Yeah. He even encourages readers to make a pros and cons list for buying versus renting, just like he did when he was reading that tweet from John Paulson.
Oh, yeah.
Who was saying that, like, now's the time to buy a house.
Right.
And he was like, whoa, 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 hold on.
Let me think this through.
Let me just, like, weigh the pros and cons here.
I love that.
Yeah, it's such a good exercise for anyone who's wrestling with that decision.
It helps you to really weigh the financial and lifestyle factors involved.
Right. Okay, so now this part kind of surprised me.
Okay.
Richards actually argues that sometimes it makes sense to spend more.
I know, right? It seems counterintuitive to everything we hear about saving and frugality.
Right. But he makes a good point.
He does.
Like, you know, what I took away from it was that it's okay to spend more on things that truly align with your values, even if it means cutting back in other areas.
So, for example, he gives the example of a friend who prioritizes family vacations and outdoor gear over a fancy car or a big house.
Okay, so they're spending more on experiences.
On experiences and things that bring them joy, but they're cutting back on things that don't matter as much to them.
Yeah, you know, it's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to spending.
Right. What matters is that your spending choices are aligned
with your values,
with what brings you joy and fulfillment.
Right. It ties back to that defining your why.
Exactly. If you know what's important to you, you can make more conscious spending decisions.
That support those values.
Okay.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about investing. You know, this is a topic that I think causes a lot of anxiety and confusion.
It does.
Even for people who are generally pretty good with their finances. And Richards acknowledges that, you know, a lot of people feel disillusioned towards the stock market, especially, you know, after following bad advice or getting caught up in the hype of the financial entertainment industry.
He even admits to making those mistakes himself.
He does.
I remember the InfoSpace story, $10,000 down the drain.
Right.
But you know, it's reassuring to know that even experts fall prey to those temptations.
Yeah, and you know what he emphasizes is that there's a big difference between investing and speculating, chasing hot stock tips or trying to time the market. That's just gambling.
That's gambling plain and simple.
Right. And, you know, he advocates for a long-term evidence-based approach. He compares it to the scientific method.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It takes the emotion out of it. It encourages a more rational and disciplined approach.
And he talks about this concept of compensated risk.
Okay.
Which basically means that, you know, accepting higher potential returns typically comes with higher risk.
Right.
So it's about finding a balance that feels comfortable for you.
Right. So what are some of the general principles?
Well, he talks about how, you know, stocks will generally offer higher returns than bonds or cash over the long term.
Okay.
But they also come with more risk.
Right. Higher return.
Exactly.
Okay. And then what about, like...
He also talks about how smaller companies and financially weaker companies can offer higher potential returns. But again, they also come with increased risk.
So it's all about kind of weighing those different factors.
In that sweet spot between risk and return.
Okay. And then, of course, diversification.
Oh, yeah. Diversification is key.
Right.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Spread your investments across a range of asset classes to reduce your overall risk.
And he tells this great story about challenging his colleagues
Oh, yeah.
to come up with a default investment strategy on the spot without knowing anything about a hypothetical person's goals or risk tolerance.
Yeah.
And they all struggled.
Oh, that's fun.
Because they recognized that a one-size-fits-all approach simply doesn't work when it comes to investing.
Right. So it highlights the importance of personalization.
Absolutely.
Taking the time to understand your unique needs and goals.
Before making any investment decisions.
Yeah. Okay. But he also recognizes that not everyone wants or needs this like super customized, complex investment plan.
It can be overwhelming.
It is. Yeah. So for those folks, he introduces this idea of a default portfolio.
The classic 60-40 split.
The 30 split.
Between stocks and bonds.
Okay.
It's a classic institutional approach that has historically performed well.
Over the long term.
Over the long term.
But as he points out, it's just a starting point.
Right. It should be adjusted based on your individual circumstances.
Right.
Risk tolerance, time horizon.
Okay, so for example, if you're a young investor, someone in their 20s or 30s, they might opt for a more aggressive 90-10 stock allocation.
Right, because they have more time to recover from any market fluctuations.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you're someone who's in their 40s or 50s and you're just starting to save for retirement, you might choose a more conservative allocation.
Okay.
With a higher percentage of bonds.
Got it. So it's all about finding that sweet spot, between risk and return.
That aligns with your specific situation and goals.
Oh, okay. But, even with a really solid, well thought out investment plan in place, market volatility is unavoidable.
It is part of the game.
Yeah.
The market goes up, the market goes down.
And Richards acknowledges that, experiencing those market downturns can be really emotionally challenging.
Oh, absolutely.
He tells a story about a woman who knew logically that she needed to sell some of her underperforming stocks. Right. But emotionally,
she was having a hard time.
She just couldn't let go.
Yes, that fear and attachment that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
We get attached to our investments.
Yeah.
Even when they're not performing well.
That's why he says, it's so important to be prepared for that market volatility.
Or in advance.
In advance.
Yeah, have a plan.
Right.
Before you even start investing.
He suggests creating an investment policy statement. What are your thoughts on that?
I actually think it's a brilliant idea. Having that written document.
That outlines your investment strategy and why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
Can serve as this powerful anchor, during those times.
When you're tempted to make an emotional decision, you can refer back to that document and remind yourself.
Of your plan.
Of your long-term goals.
And why you made those choices in the first place.
Exactly.
It's like having a compass to guide you through the storm.
That's a great way to put it.
And, if things get really rough or you're just feeling completely overwhelmed, Richards reminds us that it's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely.
It's not a sign of weakness to admit that you need some guidance.
Especially when it comes to something as complex as managing your finances.
Exactly. And he doesn't just say, go find an advisor.
No.
He actually outlines specific qualities to look for. Like someone who understands your values and goals is transparent about any potential conflicts of interest and is genuinely committed to your long-term financial well-being.
It's about finding a trusted partner.
Yeah.
Who can help you navigate the complexities of the financial world.
And make choices that are truly in your best interest.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our plan. We're prepared for the market ups and downs.
Yeah.
We know when to seek professional guidance. What else?
Well, in the final chapter,
yeah,
he focuses on creating guardrails.
Guardrails.
To prevent those impulsive financial decisions.
Okay.
That can really derail even the best laid plans.
Right. So it's like you're setting up systems and habits that make it easier to stay on track without constantly having to rely on willpower.
You got it.
Okay.
So, for example, he suggests automating as much as possible.
Automating, but
your savings, your bill payments, your 401k contributions.
Right. So it just takes the guesswork out of it.
It does.
And helps you stay consistent without even having to think about it.
And, it removes that temptation
Yeah.
to make those spur-of-the-moment decisions that we often regret later.
I love that idea.
It's all about making it easy to do the right thing.
Yeah. He also encourages readers to view past financial mistakes not as failures, but as learning opportunities.
Right. We all make mistakes.
Well, we do.
It's part of being human.
Absolutely.
But the key is to understand why they happened.
Right.
And adjust our approach.
To avoid repeating them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
It's about growth, not self-flagellation.
Yes.
And finally, he reminds us of the beauty of benign neglect.
Benign neglect.
When it comes to investing.
Okay, what does that mean?
So once you have a solid plan in place, resist the urge to constantly tinker with it.
Okay.
Or chase after every new investment trend.
Oh, that's hard.
It is.
Especially with
all the noise.
All the noise, and all the advice and...
Yeah, it's hard to tune it out.
Yeah. But he says trust the process.
Trust the process.
And let your investments grow patiently over time.
Exactly. Time is your friend when it comes to investing.
I think that's a great note to end on for this part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From insurance and debt management to navigating market volatility and seeking professional advice.
And I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah. There's so much more to unpack, especially when it comes to aligning your finances with your values.
Yeah.
And creating a life that feels both financially secure and emotionally fulfilling.
We've talked about a lot of the kind of, nuts and bolts of personal finance, budgeting, saving, investing, even finding an advisor.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that keeps coming up in Richard's book is that human side of it. Those emotions and mindsets that can really make or break our financial well-being.
It's a crucial aspect that I think often gets overlooked in traditional financial advice. It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about creating a life that feels good, both financially and emotionally.
It's so easy to get caught up in that chase for more.
Oh, yeah.
More money, a bigger house, a fancier car. But those things don't always translate to happiness.
No, they don't.
Or fulfillment.
He talks about how, for many people, financial security can actually turn into an obsession.
Oh, wow.
This never-ending pursuit of more.
Yeah.
It's like we're on this treadmill, constantly striving, but never quite feeling satisfied.
It makes me think of that saying. We buy things we don't need with money we don't have.
Yeah.
To impress people we don't like.
Oh, I love that one.
I know, it's so true, though.
Have you ever fallen into that trap?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we all have at some point.
It's easy to get caught up in that comparison game.
Yeah.
Comparing ourselves to others, feeling like we're not measuring up.
And Richards encourages us to step back and ask ourselves a really important question.
What's that?
What is enough?
What is enough?
What truly brings me joy and contentment?
Yeah, that's a powerful question.
It is.
Because it forces us to confront our values and priorities.
Right.
Is it about accumulating wealth for the sake of it?
Yeah.
Or is it about using money as a tool to create a life that feels meaningful and aligned with our passions?
One of the biggest takeaways for me from this book has been the importance of simplifying our financial lives.
I completely agree.
It's so easy to feel overwhelmed.
Oh, it is.
By the complexity of it all.
Yeah.
The investment options, the financial news.
The pressure to keep up with the Joneses.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And Richards advocates for this back-to-basics approach.
Oh, love that.
Focusing on the core principles that really matter. Creating a clear budget saving consistently.
Right.
Investing wisely, managing debt responsibly.
Those are the fundamentals.
They are.
That's the foundation.
And remembering that, it's not a race or competition.
Yeah.
It's about creating a financial plan that works for you,
Yeah.
one that aligns with your values, your goals, and your unique circumstances.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. What are some of the things you're taking away from this?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me is that reminder that financial planning is a journey. It's not a destination.
I love that perspective.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process of learning, adjusting, and evolving as our lives change.
Exactly. Life is unpredictable, and our financial plans need to be adaptable.
Absolutely.
What about you? What stood out to you?
You know, for me, it's that emphasis on the emotional side of money. You know, Richard's book has really reinforced the importance of understanding our own biases and tendencies and developing strategies for managing those emotions.
Especially when it comes to investing.
Especially when it comes to investing.
I struggled with that too.
Yeah.
You know, that tendency to compare myself to others and feel like I'm not doing enough or making the right choices.
It's easy to fall into that trap of feeling inadequate.
It is.
But you know what?
Listen.
It's so important to focus on aligning our finances with our own values, not with some external standard of success that might not even be relevant to us.
You know, Richards really drives that point home.
He does.
Throughout the book, you know, it's not about becoming a financial expert or chasing the highest returns.
Right.
It's about finding financial peace of mind and creating a life that feels
rich and fulfilling.
Rich and fulfilling.
Both financially and emotionally.
Well said. I think that's a really beautiful message to leave our listeners with.
Financial peace of mind is achievable. You know, it starts with taking that first step. Creating a plan that works for you. And remembering that it's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the one-page financial plan, I hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools to help you simplify your financial life.
Absolutely.
Achieve your goals and live a life
that reflects what matters most to you.
Yes.
Remember, you have the power to shape your financial future. It starts with taking control, making informed decisions, and focusing on what truly brings you joy and fulfillment.
Beautifully said.